Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with this week's Thursday Brews Day. I have been playing Standard non-stop. I'm sure my eyes are bloodshot. I haven't had sleep for a while. Probably should have streamed a little bit, but I've been really focused on just playing the actual decks rather than trying to keep people entertained. So I apologize for the lack of videos. Usually when I get some time, I do try to do video series and streaming, but it's been pretty intense. So mainly because I am enjoying Standard. And when I say I'm enjoying Standard, I am really enjoying Standard. Everything is wide open. I've seen basically every archetype that has existed since Origins forward almost. Or at least, as soon as either Battle for Zendikar or Eldritch Moon or Shadows of Innistrad were in the Standard format, I'm seeing some of the similar archetypes that existed back during those time periods, at least people trying around with them. So very, very happy to see that. The metagame is very diverse. There's still a lot of Mardu, but if you actually look at the statistics on some of the SCG Opens, there was a lot of Mardu in the top 8 and in the top 32, but it was by far the most played deck there. So I think it's just some of the bias of the numbers of people entering the tournament was so high that, of course, it's what is that called, a conversion bias or something like that? I don't know how I'd explain it, but of course, if there are so many people playing a deck, it's going to show up in the top 8s and top 32s, top 64s, etc. So Mardu is beatable. I still have a little bit of a problem with a lot of the decks I've been playing with the first turn Toolcraft Exemplar into second turn Heart of Khorne into third turn, like Scrap Each Scrounger, Crew, swinging for 7, and then followed up with a Gideon or Unlicensed Disintegration on turn 4. That draw is still really, really tough, but the Mardu, if it doesn't have that draw, it is definitely beatable. There's also a deck going around that's very similar to Mardu, but instead of white, they run green. It's basically the exact same red and black cards, and are still running Heart of Khorne. They still run the Voltaic Brawler instead of... that's their go-to crew card for Heart of Khorne. Scrap Each Scrounger still in there, and Licensed Disintegration still in there. Seen some other versions with the Werewolf, the 3/3, and also with the God, because those have a lot of good synergies together. So anyway, there's those type of archetypes that still exist, and then it is just all over the place. There's a new archetype today with the take extra turn strategy. Remember the good old land ramp strategy to take extra turns? Some of them are using the 7-mana white spell. If you cast it twice, you win the game. A lot of them are also relying on Nissa as just the win con. The Torrential Gearhulk decks are still everywhere. The Aetherix Marvel decks are still everywhere. The Prized Amalgam decks have a bazillion different flavors, whether they're in a zombie deck, whether they're in a Kozilek's Return deck and an Elder Deep Fiend, or whether they're even in just the old school Madness version. I've even seen a deck with the Bloodhall Priest in a Madness version. So the red-black burn is still around. The red-black aggro, the old school Weldfast Engineer red-black aggro deck still exists. I'm sure it's only a matter of time before the Reality Smasher burn deck comes back, kind of that mid-range killer deck. I'm trying to think of some other archetypes that I've faced, but the Drake cycling, easily a good dozen, 20, 30 different decks that I've played against in the past few days on MTGO. I have had some success. A lot of it I've been running under some pretty bad variance luck, especially with this deck you see before you. I call this Abzan Displacer, and oh man, with a 21 land deck, you'd assume I'd never hit 11 lands, and that is happening all the time. But let's just get into this one. So this is my Abzan Displacer. Now that we're 4 minutes in the video, I'm going to finally talk about it. This is going back to the old archetype of Eldritch Evolution, or the old archetype of the Zulaport Cutthroat, plus the Brood Monitor, plus Eldrazi Displacer. It doesn't rely on the combo, but what is cool about this is you can actually combo off your opponent if they are like a do-nothing deck, or if the mid-game kind of gets really clogged up. I have won multiple times with this combination. And other than that, it's just an Eldritch Evolution toolbox / value deck. And the key card in this is the Distended Mindbender, which is really good against Gearhulk decks. Really good against basically just the Torrential Gearhulk or the blue do-nothing decks, because the trigger happens on cast. So I often try to get it off a Treasure Keeper or a Matter Reshaper, and both these are really good with Eldritch Evolution. So that's basically our sack outlets for the Treasure Keeper and the Matter Reshaper. Also the Filigree Familiar. The Gonti Lord of Luxury gets its use as well. And again, everything in this deck just tries to value and then until you establish a combo or flat out beat down your opponent. So we have Traverse is the other way to go and get the combo, or go and get Distended Mindbenders or whatever card we need in that slot. So to get the Delirium, we have Evolving Wilds and Scattered Groves. Both of these can put the land into the graveyard for the land count. Then, as far as the instances are concerned, we have 2 Dissenters Deliverances and 3 Fatal Pushes. I did have 4 Deliverances and no Fatal Pushes at one point, but there are some like the Heart of Khorne and Voltaic Brawler decks. I need the Fatal Pushes to take care of the early Long Tusk Cubs or Voltaic Brawlers or those early Scrappy Scroungers, those type of things, just so I can stabilize to get to my later drops. If those aggro decks go away again, if we're going back into Torrential Gearhulk, then the Dissenter's Deliverance is a lot better because you can just cycle it or kill off like a Dynavolt Tower, or if it is even Heart of Khorne, you can kill the Heart of Khorne. But what's so good about this is just cycling into your graveyard. It's basically a green draw spell, which cycling 1. So instant and sorcery are very easy to get into the graveyard. So is land. We have 5 of all of these that can go into the graveyard. So 5 lands, 5 instances, and 5 sorceries. And then a ton of creatures. And 2 of them being, or actually 3 of them being artifact creatures. So that's why we're running so many Treasure Keepers. It's the other way to get Delirium online. And Serve of the Conduit's the best way to ramp into like a Treasure Keeper or just to smooth out your draws. We're only running 2 Eldrazi Displacers. That's all we really need. In some matchups, they're really, really strong. In others, they just die to like a Fiery Temper, a Fatal Push, or Unlicensed Disintegration early. But there have been some matchups where this has been the key card to win that matchup, as just exiling creatures is still really, really good. You can flicker back a Gideon if you need to. It does get another activation if that's the case, but there's one game that I was in the blue take extra turns. I flickered the Awakened land, and my opponent was not able to basically beat me down with that. And it, of course, is a pivotal combo piece with the Zulaport Cutthroat and the Brood Monitor. So Matter Shapers, Treasure Keepers, Gontis are all going to be fuel for the Eldritch Evolution. And what we're Eldritch Evolutioning into is either a combo piece, like the Brood Monitor, a Noxious Gearhulk, or an Ishkanah, since Delirium will usually be online at that point if you do kill off a Treasure Keeper to Eldritch Evolution, because most likely we'll already have a sorcery and a land in the graveyard or an instant, and then the Delirium gets online. So Gonti still is pretty good against the mirrors. Well, like I say, mirrors like other mid-range decks, or even like Torrential Gearhulk it's good against because you can use a card and still have a 2/3 Death Touch behind. Cast Out is also another Delirium enabler and just kind of like a panic button. It gets rid of a lot of problematic cards, anything from creatures to planeswalkers to even artifacts that are giving you a problem. It's a great way to deal with both the green and the red god at the moment. So sideboard, I have Scarab Feast. This is surprisingly good against the zombie decks and Prized Amalgam decks. Dispossess is still good against Torrential Gearhulk. Pick the Brain is still good against Torrential Gearhulk as well, especially if you get an early Delirium online. Manglehorn comes in against any artifact deck that you can tutor up as well, or then it's still a nice thing to Eldritch Evolution or Eldrazi Displacer later on. The 4 Thoughtseize are in here for the more mid-range based strategies. This rips out your opponent's Torrential Gearhulks and Glimmers and things like that, and keeps it fair until the Distended Mindbender rips out the rest of it. 2 more Distended Mindbenders. We have a Mockery of Nature, as this can kill artifacts and enchantments at the cost of Emerge 8, which actually isn't too tough with a Treasure Keeper. So it is usually coming out on the right turn with the Treasure Keeper, and even Gonti, those type of cards. And the Null is really in for those grindy-based matchups. We can go get a Null and then bring back 2 cards. I like to bring this in versus decks that are trying to disrupt my combo. And then Demon comes in versus like usually zombies or some energy strategies, anything that puts out a lot of 2/2s. I do bring it in versus Mardu. And Linvala will come in versus the aggressive decks as it clogs through the board with 8 toughness as well as gains you 5 life most of the time. So that's kind of my toolbox strategy at the moment. I might want more Gaunties. I don't know if Treasure Keepers are actually... There are some matches where Gaunty's really bad just because this deck is very mana hungry. So it's tough to really exile something and then really have any mana to do anything with it when you still need to progress your own board. So I don't know about Gaunty. I've tried a Bant version with this and ran, instead of black, was able to run the Cloud Blazer and the Rogue Refiner, but at that point I think you have to play Panharmonicon, and then it gets a lot different because you don't want like the Treasure Keeper. But Panharmonicon can really go off with the Zulp or with the Eldrazi Displacer and the Broodmonitor and a Thought-Knot Seer. That creates an infinite combo, as well as there's other things that can create little loops here, like Gaunty, if you are in a 4-color version, can infinitely mill your opponent. But anyway, that's just this Abzan Displacer that's been playing for the last day. I'll show you a few other decks I've played in the past few days here. Ooh, it looks like they're not even... Okay, so the 4-color Energy we saw last time, I actually replaced 4-color Energy with a Sultai Energy, and this deck was working pretty good as well, except... I don't know if Ulamog is actually well positioned anymore. Like the Aetherworks Marvel was good at the very first. Like it's so crazy how fast the metagame is adjusting, and it was good like 2 days ago. And then I've been running into a lot of either like Gearhulk decks or really aggressive decks that just push through this. But I've played a Sultai Energy. This did have 4 Ulamogs in it at one point, and I dropped it down to 1. And again, this is just trying to get as much value off of the energy strategy. This is very similar to a Delirium-based strategy with Ishkanah, Recurring Demon Ishkanah. So this is very similar to the deck you just saw. Had a lot of success with this version. Went a couple of 4-1s. I think I was running the 4 Ulamogs, 4 Aetherworks Marvel main. I didn't keep a copy of that around, but then it just really started running into some bad matchups and I gave up on it. But I still want to try a lot of other decks. There are so many viable strategies. There's another Fevered Visions actually works out fine right now in the format. Doesn't want to load up here. So like this is an old school Fevered Visions. Of course, this can be updated with newer cards in this list, but the Thermal Alchemist and Fevered Visions is still a very, very viable strategy. You have some pretty good counter magic with the Censor that can just be cycled away for a burn spell later on, which is fine. And yeah, all this strategy is still really alive and well. I played a deck over at Gathering Magic called Grab and Go. Definitely go and check that out. And even has the Goblin Dark Dwellers, which is another powerful card that I'm surprised isn't seeing any play right now in Standard. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the Pro Tour. I think it's going to be crazy. I think that if it all depends on what people end up running. I really think that Green-White Humans is actually well positioned if the Mardu and the Red-Black aggro and the Jund aggro's are going to be a thing. The problem with Green-White Humans is it's pretty miserable to face against Torrential Gearhulk or the Temur Aetherworks. Both of those are tough matchups, and then Bant Aetherworks is even more tough because they run Fumigates. And so you just lose those type of matchups, but it's very strong versus Mardu. A lot of the Green-White Humans decks can have a ton of life gain with the Glorybound Initiate, and then with the other human when it flashes in to give lifelink, and Prepare and Fight. But again, so against other mid-range and aggro strategies, it's insanely good, but then it just loses a lot of the ability to really push through Marvel and other of Torrential Gearhulk, other kind of what I like to call like either combo or blue do nothing type decks. So anyway, I'll keep an eye on the Pro Tour. There's still I think some hidden gems in the format. I've pulled the trigger on Licensed Disintegrations just because it seems like it's being played in almost every deck that runs these color combinations. And I think in Uncommon, if you see how Fatal Push has gone up, maybe Unlicensed Disintegration can go up a few bucks by the time it's not being drafted anymore. And yeah, I think that the Kaladesh might be more of an not as focused upon set to be opened. I think its time is done where people are going to crack packs. So this is a card that could slowly go up in price over time, kind of like the Thraben Inspector or the Grasp of Darkness or similar type cards. So anyway, I have a huge market money video coming up. It's probably going to focus on the Pro Tour. I also have I've been focusing on cards that I think are criminally undervalued in Modern, and we'll have that video out shortly. So I'll try to play. I was going to stream tonight, but like I said, I just need to take a break because I've been playing it nonstop. And I'll let you know with some of the other brews I've been working on. I've been working on kind of this Orzhov Enchantments old school list too, that used to use the Wasteland Strangler and the Eldrazi Displacer. So I think that's also well positioned right now. We still have a lot of cards like the Cast Out and Transgress the Mind. With still have good old Stasis Snare and Deck and Stone that works out really well with Wasteland Strangler if we end up being more of a creature-based aggro. I'd like to see Spirits come back too. I think Spirits are pretty well positioned. There's not as many Lilianas and Walking Ballistas running around. That's what really kept that deck from shining. Like I said, it's just wide. The whole entire environment is wide open. If you have a certain type of deck you like to play, it probably can work. And I highly, highly encourage everyone to go out and play Standard. And I mean, I really did want to start pushing Frontier. I've been having a lot of fun in Frontier. But with Standard being just in the healthy state that it is right now, there's just no point to it. But same with Modern. I just really loving Standard at the moment. So again, I'll try to have some more brews for you shortly. This has been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.